Hi, I'm Ottilie. That name probably doesn't ring a bell. That's the thing about people like me. We don't make waves. We learn early that silence is survival. But if you've ever sat quietly while someone else stole your light, if you've ever had to clap for a sibling who walked on a stage built from your sacrifice, then maybe you already know me. It started on a warm Sunday afternoon in the marble-glossed kitchen of my parents' home, the kind of place where every fork had a matching salad fork, and every smile hid something rotting underneath. Megan, my older sister, was glowing. That was her specialty, radiance. But it was the kind that made others look dimmer by comparison, especially me. Dad poured her a glass of Sauvignon Blanc, like she was royalty visiting the peasants. To Megan, he toasted, the woman who made the Monroe name mean something. Mom clinked glasses without looking at me. We're so proud of her. You know, not everyone has that kind of drive. I smiled, the way I always did when something sharp was said with a cherry on top. I was good at that, swallowing shards. But Megan wasn't finished. She leaned in, lips barely curled. You know, Tills, not everyone has to piggyback on someone else's success to feel important. You might want to learn that. I heard a little chuckle. Maybe it was Dad. Maybe it was my own dignity dying a quiet death. I excused myself and went to the guest bathroom, locking the door. Not to cry. That's not how I'm built. Instead, I opened the voice recorder on my phone. Record, I whispered. And then I walked back out like nothing happened. Because nothing had happened. Yet. You don't grow up in a family like mine without understanding that love is conditional. Megan was the golden child. Blonde, brilliant, bold. She graduated top of her class, became a tech CEO by 30, dated a man who owned 3 private jets, and once gave a TEDx talk about how to lead with humility. Ironic, really. I was the other one. Quiet, artistic. I liked code, finance puzzles, machine learning. Things I had to explain twice before anyone cared, if they ever did. My parents called me the experimental one, which in our family meant the one we stopped bragging about. But that night was different. That night, something snapped. Or maybe it clicked. As I stood by the window and listened to Megan brag about being offered equity in a new AI startup, something in my chest cracked open. She didn't even understand the tech, I realized. She knew buzzwords, not architecture. But it didn't matter. People trusted her simply because she said things confidently and wore her hair in beachy waves. That's when she turned to me again. You know, you could do more with your life if you stopped clinging to successful people. Build something of your own, Ottilie. If you even can. I didn't respond. Instead, I glanced at her wine glass. Twist 1. She never knew she'd see my name on her paycheck 6 months later. Not until it was already too late. After dinner, Dad took Megan to the study. We want to talk business, he said to her, as if I were an employee waiting to be dismissed. I stayed in the kitchen, picking up their dishes because nobody had asked me not to. Mom stopped me briefly. Tills, sweetheart, you shouldn't take things so personally. Your sister just wants what's best for you. She's trying to motivate you. I looked at her then. Really looked. At the woman who had turned silence into armor and favoritism into religion. Thanks, Mom, I said. You always know how to make me feel like I matter. She didn't catch the sarcasm. Or maybe she did. Either way, I left that night and never came back. I didn't go far. Just enough distance to feel the cold. The studio I found had mold on the ceiling and no heat after midnight. I paid rent in cash, worked days as a barista, nights as a delivery driver, and taught myself to build financial AI models with a used laptop and a cracked phone. Most people wouldn't call that a beginning. I called it home. Sometimes the loudest revenge is the one no one hears coming. Some people say when you hit rock bottom, you find out who you really are. That's not true. You find out who they really are. It had been 16 days since I walked out of my family's house with a half-dead phone, 2 changes of clothes, and $430 in my bank account. Most of it from a tutoring gig I'd quit 2 weeks prior. There was no grand epiphany, no movie soundtrack, just a loud silence as I moved into a 200 square foot studio that smelled like broken promises and burnt pizza. And somehow, it still felt better than being invisible in a mansion. The apartment was above a pawn shop. My neighbor, Arlo, blasted 80s synth rock through the thin walls and seemed to be running some sort of underground tattoo business out of his bathroom. The ceiling above my futon sagged, and the radiator made noises like it was coughing up ghosts. But it was mine. There was power in that. Even if the only meal I could afford that week was rice with soy sauce and canned corn, I savored every bite like it was defiance. During the day, I worked at Brewcraft Cafe. We wore forest green aprons, fake smiles, and got lectured weekly about elevating the customer experience. The espresso machine had more attitude than most of our regulars. At night, I delivered groceries for Instadrop. They said you could make $40 an hour. That was a lie, unless you ignored speed limits, traffic laws, and your own well-being. I didn't ignore any of those things, but I didn't sleep much either. Instead, I studied. On the floor next to my mattress were 3 old library books on financial modeling, a cracked Chromebook, and a legal pad full of chaotic scribbles. Probability trees, market behavior patterns, neural networks, anomaly detection formulas. The kind of equations Megan once scoffed at. I remembered her voice clearly. Data science is just nerds making graphs that say nothing. What matters is instinct. She had instinct. I had facts. So I started building something. One night, after a 10-hour shift, I posted a complex theory about behavioral anomalies in AI stock predictions on a niche finance forum. I expected it to disappear into the void like everything else I wrote. Instead, I got a message. You're too smart to be buried here. Want to build something that shakes the market? The username was graymatter42. That's how I met Eleanor Kim. We started chatting privately. She didn't tell me much at first, only that she used to run a hedge fund and got blacklisted after exposing fraud. She said most justice in the financial world came with a muzzle and a non-disclosure agreement. But she had one thing left, her brain. And I had mine. Together, we started sketching out an idea. A shadow startup. Quiet. Invisible. But lethal. We called it Shadow Ledger, a deep AI that could track the tiniest tremors in financial systems before they became quakes. It could see patterns no human could, patterns no existing systems dared to explore. You know, Eleanor said during one of our late-night calls, I used to believe in playing the game right, but now I want to rewrite the damn rules. Her voice was rough, like someone who'd been screaming silently for years. It resonated. Weeks passed. We made progress. She introduced me to encrypted architecture platforms, funding channels under shellcore, and backdoors into public financial records. All legal, mostly. Still, I hadn't told her about my family, about Megan. Until one night, it slipped. We were reviewing an article about AI-backed VC deals when I saw Megan's face pop up on the sidebar. There she was, beaming under the headline, Monroe Tech's CEO partners with Legacy Ventures to lead AI innovation. I froze, could barely breathe. Eleanor noticed. What is it? I hesitated. Then, that's my sister. A pause. Tell me everything, I told her. Not the sanitized version. The truth. The belittling. The subtle erasures. The party. The paycheck line. All of it. Eleanor was quiet for a while. Then she said something I'll never forget. Revenge is not rage, Otili. It's clarity. You don't fight fire with fire. You bury them in their own ashes. That week, I made a decision. I registered O. Monroe as the co-founder of a Delaware-based startup under the name Dovetail Strategic LLC. Nobody would trace it, not yet. We were going to build something real. And then we were going to make sure the very people who underestimated me had to pay me to survive. Have you ever wanted to be underestimated? Just long enough to strike? What would your empire look like? Sockside, expanded, deep-cut narrative with emotional build, drama, and psychological depth. New York in winter isn't romantic. It's brutal. Slushy streets, exhaust-drenched snow, and a kind of cold that settles in your bones like it's renting space. The kind of cold that reminds you you're alive and alone. I moved the operations of Shadow Ledger into a shared workspace in Brooklyn, a gritty old warehouse turned tech hub with broken elevators and motivational posters peeling off exposed brick. But it had fast Wi-Fi, unlimited coffee, and one critical detail. No one here cared who I was. That anonymity was gold. Eleanor called it the fog phase. You build behind smoke. You feed silence with data, she said, her voice crackling through my AirPods as I coded on 3 monitors. And when they finally hear your name, it's because they need you more than you need them. I didn't sleep much. Not out of sacrifice, but because adrenaline is its own drug. Watching code compile felt like reclaiming parts of myself Megan had erased. Our platform was learning fast, reading fluctuations across niche asset classes, crawling Reddit threads, and blockchain transaction logs like a quiet predator. Shadow Ledger could now predict small financial shifts 48 hours before they happened. It wasn't about money. Not really. It was about influence. And in finance, that's everything. 2 things happened that February that changed everything. First, Megan's company started bleeding. Slow, subtle. But I noticed it immediately. A chain of microtransactions from an over-leveraged acquisition. A sudden drop in morale across departments, per Glassdoor reviews. A key executive, Eduardo Fields, quietly filed for early retirement. I knew Eduardo. He was sharp, strategic, and loyal to no one but the numbers. Eleanor was the one who caught it first. "This isn't coincidence," she said. "They've overbuilt on weak bones. If we time it right, we don't just enter the market, we rewrite their playbook." The second thing? My name surfaced. Not Adelie, of course, but O. Monroe. One of our beta clients, an East Coast hedge fund with a taste for emerging fintech, listed us in a private investor report. Megan's firm, M Concepts, had been sniffing around the same niche, and suddenly they were curious, very curious. 3 weeks later, I received a message through our encrypted contact form. It came from an executive assistant named Jordan. He was representing a private AI consultancy team interested in a discreet partnership. He attached an NDA and requested a virtual meeting. The logo on his email signature? M Concepts. I stared at the screen for a long time. My fingers hovered over the keyboard. Then I picked up my phone. "Eleanor," I said, "they're knocking on our door." She didn't sound surprised. "They don't know you built it?" "No." She paused. Then, with a quiet thrill in her voice, "Good, let them come." We scheduled the meeting under my alias. I used voice modulation, dimmed video filters, and a virtual backdrop. It was like watching ghosts try to court the woman they once buried. Megan wasn't on the call, but I saw her fingerprints in the pitch. Effusive praise for innovation, a half-condescending request for equity in exchange for strategic visibility, and language so glossy it felt like ice. I played my part. "I appreciate your interest," I said, voice altered but firm. "But we're selective. We need assurance of operational independence, full decision authority." Jordan smiled stiffly. "That might be difficult, given the stature of our founder." "I understand. Then I think we're done here." I closed the laptop. Then I laughed. Not out of joy, out of disbelief. After all these years, they still assumed they held the pen, but I was already writing the next chapter. A few nights later, I sat on the fire escape of my building, cradling a lukewarm cider and watching lights flicker across Brooklyn. The wind bit at my fingers. My phone buzzed. A message from Eleanor. "They're circling now. Your sister's name is on 3 internal memos about Shadow Ledger. They want you bad. Let them chase ghosts." I smiled. Then I replied, "Let's give them a trail." Ever wondered how long you'd let someone underestimate you? just to make the reveal more satisfying? Some masks aren't for hiding, they're for building. You can almost hear the air shift in a company when fear walks in. It's not loud, it's not even visible, but it ripples through boardroom chatter, late night emails, and the sudden urgency in the way people start scheduling quick syncs. M Concepts was trembling, and I hadn't even touched them directly yet. 3 weeks after the failed partnership pitch, we intercepted an internal document Eleanor decrypted through a gray area server link, a confidential risk report with 5 flagged entities threatening their current Q3 objectives. Shadow Ledger, our platform, was listed as risk number 2. Above us? Founder instability. That meant Megan. She's slipping, Eleanor muttered, zooming in on the screen. They've lost confidence. I leaned back in my chair, eyes burning from hours of debugging code. She's too public to implode quietly. If she falls, they'll protect the brand, not her. That's your in. By now, Shadow Ledger wasn't just predicting trends. We were influencing them. We launched a beta version to 2 more investment firms who used our microtrend AI to move millions. Discreetly, silently. And every move they made shifted the terrain under M Concept's feet. Our code didn't crash their world. It just made their map useless. The phone call came at 6:42 p.m. on a rainy Thursday. Blocked number. I let it go to voicemail, then another, then a third. Finally, I answered. A familiar voice said my name like it was a sin. Ottilie! I froze. Dad? There was a pause. It wasn't the silence of regret. It was strategy. He was calculating tone, message, approach. We need to talk, privately. We met at the Glenmore Club, not the main lounge where he hosts fundraising dinners or golfs with hedge fund royalty. The old boardroom in the West Wing, low ceilings, mahogany walls, and the kind of lighting that made everyone look tired. Megan was already there, sitting at the long table in a perfectly tailored navy suit, arms crossed. Her eyes flicked up as I entered. So, you are O. Monroe. I sat down. No handshake, no apology. I guess you finally looked past my initials. Dad cut to the chase. Whatever this game is, it ends now. We're not enemies. You're still family. You sure? I asked. Because it didn't feel that way when Megan mocked me in front of a room full of investors, or when Mom told me I lacked leadership DNA. He shifted uncomfortably. Megan stayed silent, jaw clenched. We were wrong, Dad said flatly. That doesn't matter now. What matters is saving what we built. M Concepts is bleeding, and your software is one of the only things our competitors haven't acquired yet. He paused. We're offering you equity, 40%. You'll be lead strategist on AI development. Megan steps down temporarily. Publicly, you'll be named as the visionary behind the rebuild. In exchange, Shadow Ledger folds into our umbrella. I looked at Megan. She didn't blink, didn't flinch, but her silence screamed. Temporarily? I echoed. What happens when I'm done fixing your mess? You slaughter back in? It's a family business, he said, like it explained everything. I stood slowly, let the moment hang. Then I leaned forward, inches from my father's face. You didn't come here to offer me power. You came because you finally realized I was the power, and you're terrified I won't save you. I left the room, but the war wasn't over. That night, I returned to Eleanor with a new plan. We'll let them sweat. They want to survive. They pay, publicly. And Megan? She'll sign over permanent executive control. Eleanor raised an eyebrow. And if she refuses? I smiled. She won't, because she's smart enough to know the only thing worse than being overshadowed is being irrelevant. 2 days later, I received a formal email from M Concepts' legal team. They offered everything I requested, except for one red line in the contract. Megan's title would return after 18 months. I replied with one sentence. Make it never, or lose the only asset you have left. Some people only change when you make them irrelevant. What would you demand if the tables turned? There's a unique kind of silence in betrayal. It doesn't scream. It doesn't even whisper. It just detaches. Cold, sterile, calculated. The kind of silence that makes you look twice at the people you've let closest. After the boardroom confrontation, Shadow Ledger's integration terms were all but locked. My conditions were clear: permanent executive control, no PR spin, no shared equity with Megan, and zero interference from Daniel Monroe. Eleanor called it a surgical strike. But power is never taken cleanly. And while I was dismantling the house my parents built from the outside, someone inside was quietly sawing through my foundation. We had a small internal circle at Shadow Ledger. I kept it lean, just 7 people, all remote, all verified. Except one, Harper Quinn. She was our UI architect based in San Francisco. Smart, disarming, funny, in the kind of way that put engineers at ease. I'd worked with her closely, daily Slack chats, late-night builds, even one emotional vent session after the M-Concepts deal was proposed. I told her things I hadn't even told Eleanor. She told me she hated corporate politics, that she left a toxic startup after her ex-boyfriend stole her ideas, that she believed in building things that scared the right people. I believed her, until I opened the analytics report. Eleanor flagged it first: an unusual amount of outbound traffic from one internal user's machine. Nothing sensitive had left yet, but someone had tried. 3 times. And each time, the login ID used was Harper's. She wouldn't, I said, staring at the screen like I could will the truth to change. Eleanor didn't blink. She did, and she was smart enough to cover her tracks if we hadn't upgraded our internal monitor. This wasn't curiosity, Ottilie. She was testing us. My hands were numb. Then the twist landed, quiet, brutal. Eleanor clicked a final tab. An email thread between Harper and Megan Monroe's private address. The code base isn't encrypted the way they claim. Ottilie's too focused on visibility to guard the back door. Do not proceed until I confirm transfer. We need to keep this clean. Understood. I'll wait for your go. It wasn't just betrayal. It was premeditated. I called Harper that night, not through Slack, a direct line, no filter. She picked up on the second ring, cheerful. Hey boss, burning the midnight oil? Cut the act. There was a pause, then a sigh. I was hoping you'd find out later. Why? My voice didn't shake. It was too cold for that. I believed in what we built, Ottilie. I still do. But you don't get to keep power without alliances. Megan offered me what you couldn't: position, future equity, and protection when this whole thing goes public. You think I wouldn't have protected you? She laughed, bitter. No, I think you would have gone down with your pride. And I'm not interested in dying on your moral hill. That was the last time we spoke. I didn't fire her. I left her on the internal network. But every login attempt she made from that moment forward was tracked, rerouted, and mirrored back to our own servers. We fed her false code, junk data, ghost algorithms that would collapse if activated. A trap. Not just for her, but for Megan. Let them think they had a blueprint. Let them build their house out of paper. 2 days later, Eleanor looked up from her screen during our weekly call. They bit. How deep? They integrated the Ghost model into a test build this morning. Public beta goes live Friday. I nodded slowly. Then Friday, I said, they fall. Betrayal doesn't end a story. Sometimes it's the prologue to the downfall. What would you do if your closest ally turned into your enemy? Focused, emotionally charged, and strategically constructed, layered with betrayal fallout and public collapse. The official launch was scheduled for 10 a.m. Megan's crown jewel, her reinvention play. A live-streamed press event from their San Francisco HQ, hosted in a glass atrium designed to reflect light like it was handpicked by a deity. The media showed up. Investors tuned in. 100,000 viewers waited for something revolutionary. They got a catastrophe instead. Shadow Ledger's mirrored ghost code went live at 10:07. Megan, in her usual confident stance, stood on stage flanked by monitors broadcasting predictive trend lines, market dashboards, AI-generated visualizations. Everything looked flawless for 24 seconds. Then the system began auto-trading, erratic, too aggressive. A few trades overcalculated minor upticks and reinvested aggressively in volatile crypto. A minute later, the AI dumped a $3.1 million short against a stable stock. 10 seconds later, it froze. Then all screens went black. Eleanor and I watched from a small cafe in Manhattan, sipping black coffee like spectators at a theater. She didn't say a word. Neither did I. We didn't need to. Megan's face flickered on the muted live feed. That perfect PR composure cracked. Her lips moved off script. She whispered something to someone behind the curtain. Chaos blurred the stream. Within 6 minutes, every social platform lit up. What happened at M Concepts? Fake AI? Investors pulling out? Was this a scam? By noon, stock fell 18%. By 3 p.m., 4 major partners suspended collaborations pending an internal review. Internal leaks suggested the platform had been sabotaged by faulty code. That evening, CNBC ran a headline: M Concepts, from market maven to meltdown. I didn't feel joy. I felt nothing. But the silence of my inbox was broken. A message from Mom. I know you had something to do with this. Please, call us. Megan is not okay. I didn't respond. Another from Harper. I warned them not to launch. She didn't listen. She always thought she knew better. My phone rang again. This time, Daniel. I answered. What do you want? I asked, no warmth in my voice. We're prepared to go public with a statement that Shadow Ledger was responsible for the faulty integration. I didn't flinch. You sure about that? He paused. We'd prefer to negotiate quietly. I smiled bitterly, even though he couldn't see it. You don't get to negotiate after trying to steal what you couldn't build. The next day, I sent a formal notice through our legal counsel. Defamation retaliation clause, pre-injunction warning, and a quiet clause referencing recorded interactions from our last boardroom meeting. And just for style, I attached a PDF. Title: When the Architect Returns, Strategic Innovation in Unlikely Places. By Ottilie Monroe, set for release at the next FinTech keynote conference. Eleanor raised her glass over dinner that night. You didn't just win, she said. You outlasted their entire system. Not done yet, I murmured. There's one piece left. That piece came unexpectedly. A call from Megan. She sounded hollow, like someone who had finally seen herself from the outside. I didn't expect you to go this far, she said quietly. I didn't expect you to need a reminder that I was capable. A pause. Then, barely audible, did you ever want to fix things? I didn't answer right away. I wanted you to see me, I said. I just stopped needing your approval. Power doesn't destroy people. It reveals what was already broken. What would you do if the world finally saw your worth? Too late. Final chapter. Emotionally rich, structured with closure, transformation, and forward motion. Fully aligned with all narrative elements and requirements. The thing about rebuilding is, it never starts with grand plans or blueprints. It starts with silence. The silence after the storm. The kind that forces you to sit with everything you are, everything you've done, and everything you've lost in the process. I sat alone in a minimalist conference room in Berlin, staring at the skyline through floor-to-ceiling glass. My keynote was in an hour. Global AI Summit. A sold-out crowd, streaming live in 5 languages. But my mind wasn't on the stage. It was still in that voicemail. Megan's voice. Cracked. Flat. You got what you wanted. We're done. I just hope you still know who you are without the war. And the worst part? She wasn't wrong. After the M Concepts collapse, their board staged a full shakeup. Daniel was forced to step down. Megan disappeared from all public roles. Their PR firm issued a vague statement about unauthorized data integration and restructuring, but the market already knew. Shadow Ledger didn't just survive. We became the new industry standard. We signed 5 major fintech firms, acquired a European firm within 2 months. Forbes called me the ghost architect. People invited me to dinners, panels, think tanks. But no one really asked about the before. They saw me, finally. They just didn't know where I came from. I met Mom again at a private gallery opening in Chicago. She showed up unannounced, quietly dressed, no pearls, no flash. She walked up beside me, staring at a sculpture of fractured glass suspended midair. "Looks like us," she murmured. I didn't respond. After a moment, she said, "Your father's in Arizona. Heart issues. Megan's in therapy. I started reading that book you wrote." I blinked. "You read it?" She nodded. It hurt, but it felt earned. Then, with unusual vulnerability, "I don't know if we deserve forgiveness, but I'd understand if you never answered our calls again." I turned to her, holding the silence carefully. "I'm not punishing anyone," I said. "I'm just choosing peace." Peace looked different now. It looked like a nonprofit we launched, Eleanor's Fund, after she passed in her sleep 3 months before. She left everything to me. Her only request? Build something that outlives revenge. So we built it. Scholarships for women in tech, grants for whistleblowers, a sanctuary for the ones with ideas no one listened to. I cried the day we launched it. Not out of grief, out of recognition. TED Global invited me to speak. I opened not with slides, but with a story. I used to think power meant being seen. Now I know, it's having the choice to walk away from being misunderstood. I shared the early days, the silence, the cold floors, the voicemail I never played again. I didn't mention Megan by name, or my parents, or Harper, but I saw tears in the front row, and for the first time, I didn't feel like a ghost. Weeks later, I received a letter. Handwritten, no return address, Megan's handwriting. "I can't undo what I did, but I wanted you to know I'm not trying to come back. I hope you keep building, not because of us, but in spite of us." I folded the letter, placed it in the bottom drawer of my desk. I never wrote back. My days are different now. I speak less. I listen more. And every month, I mentor one young woman who reminds me of myself. Fierce, overlooked, underestimated. We talk about strategy, but also about identity, boundaries, healing. Because what I've learned is this: power isn't in the loudest moment of revenge. It's in the quiet choice to rebuild when no one is watching. Sometimes I think about that day in the kitchen. Megan's voice, crisp and sharp. "Stop clinging to successful people." I smile now, because her name? It's still on the payroll. And mine? It's on the building. Some stories don't end with applause. They end with you, finally breathing without permission. If there's one thing I've learned, it's this: sometimes the people who underestimate you the most are the ones closest to you. But your worth isn't defined by their vision, or their lack of it. It's defined by what you build when no one is clapping, when no one believes. I didn't win by being loud. I won by staying consistent, by knowing exactly who I am, without asking for permission. Now, I'd love to hear from you. Have you ever been underestimated by family? What did you do about it? Or what would you do differently? Drop your thoughts in the comments and let me know where you're watching from. And if this story spoke to you, inspired you, or just made you feel seen, go ahead. Subscribe to the channel so you don't miss what's coming next. We've got more stories that hit just as deep. See you in the next one.